Okay, so here I am in my software. I'm going to launch TrueFit. And I've got some training files that we'll be working with. Okay, so when we start out, we're going to just see this simple window application of TrueFit. While we are here, we do have some controls and information we can plug into the system. So we could go to window and substrates, and we could add with the plus symbol the actual roll or sheet or board sizes that we're working with. So we can go through and put that information into our main program and then use that over and over and over again. So this is a nice way of just setting in those substrates. The other option we have under window is tool types. So all of the different ways we might name and identify our cut information. And you can see there are some very common names here: cut contour, score, through cut. So you've got some different conditions in here, and you can always add and create your own. Near the bottom, we'll see some commonly used terms based on the cutter manufacturers, but of course we can add our own and set our own tool types in here. Okay, so I wanted to point that out to you because that's important. We have that capability of generating the different substrates as well as setting up the different tool types as far as TrueFit's controls go. So let's get started. We're going to make a new TrueFit layout. You'll notice we can drag and drop our files in here. So if I just go ahead and somewhat minimize my window, I'm over on the right here, I've got some of my standard files, and we can, in TrueFit, just drag and drop the file in there. Besides that capability, we also would be able to hit this plus symbol in the upper left corner, add artwork, and add and browse and add our files in a traditional way as well. Okay, so when we start out, I've got this one image I placed in here. I'm going to select the file, and for TrueFit to generate the contour shape, the cut path shape around this object, I'm going to go over here to the far upper right side of the screen where it says image tracing. So that's what they refer to that as, image tracing. At the very top, I can select from all of those tool types. I can select the type of tool setting I want to allow for the cut data to be seen for this file. So maybe for this example, I will pick cut contour. And then I've got some different settings in here. There's a preset sort of flow, if you will. But from here, I can just say preview, and let's see what we get for the automatic selection. Now you'll notice there's a few areas that could be improved. And so I'm just going to go ahead and move some of my sliders here and just tighten up some of my tolerances, and then go ahead and click on preview again. So it's a matter of making these fine adjustments and hitting preview until you get the auto selection shape around here. That is what you're looking for. Again, this is going to be my cut contour tool type. So I'm adjusting these settings and I'm hitting preview to have it recalculate to those settings and see where the actual shape is going to be. Now, once you have what you like, we're going to select apply, and that brings us out of the image trace menu. So now I have a cut contour setting associated around the shape of this frog. On the right side, I can also indicate the quantity. How many of these do I need? I can also set, if I wanted to change a size or a scale factor, this bleed offset and then the offset's default 0.1 is actually the sort of stay away when we go to nest these 10 frogs together to that cut contour shape, which is exactly right on that frog's outline. We may want a little bit of an offset, push away, stay away as they're nesting. And so the default is 0.1. I think a lot of times, depending on the application, if we're going to be printing and then cutting on a material with a router, very well may be we want more space in between there for the tooling to be accommodated. So this is a variable, of course, depending on what we're working with. Now from here, I'm going to go ahead and add another image file. So I'm going to bring in this good old ducky image from Photoshop days long ago. I'll select that file once and I will go over to my image trace in the upper right corner. Now for this setting, I'll change my tool type, and I think I'll set this for score. And so we can have multi-nested files that have the cut paths around them, but the cut path designation tool type can be different. So that's very, very nice as well, because that type of situation does occur often. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit preview, get my preview that I like, maybe make a few more adjustments. When I like the preview setting that I have, I'm going to go ahead and select on apply. Again, this is the software creating that shape around that object. And again, I'll tell this one to be a copy of 10 as well. And then I'm going to add in a third file. And that's going to be these bottles. We have a yellow, red, and green TrueFit bottle. I'm going to bring this in, this piece of art. And then I'll select that and create my image trace. Now for this example, I'm going to change my tool type to through. And again, I can just preview and then make some adjustments along the way until I get exactly the shape I want. And then when I'm set with that, I'll hit apply. And again, I'll set my quantity to 10. So you can see we've got 10 of these shapes, these different art files with different shapes going to be selected around them. Each of them will have a different tool type, through, a score, and then a cut contour. And they're 10 each. So now let's take a look at nesting these. In the top left corner, I've got a symbol here for nesting. I'm going to select that. In my layout, I do want to select the media type I'm working with. If it's a 36-inch roll or a 24-inch roll, or if it's a board size, I want to put that information in. So this is my substrates. So I'll be working with a 36-inch roll. Again, I can set margins, which are areas of non-printing area. If I want to keep away a little bit of an area, top, bottom, left, right, and have that kind of be isolated from any area that this will be nested for. And at the bottom, I'm going to just place this on center, and my rotation will be orthogonal, which will be rotate as you need to get the best nested area. The other choice is no rotation, and there you could have a choice for that at times as well. So I'm going to click on start and let my calculations begin. So as we see that progression bar moving across and our timer is counting down, this is calculating the best possible nest strategy for us. So once this is completed, we're going to have a specific shape and location of how this information is going to be nested. So here's our final product. Now, at this moment, if we looked at this, and let's say one of our goals is to keep printing and cutting and storing some type of sticker or label, and when the orders come through, we just ship them out, place the order, fulfill the order, and all we really need to do is keep on printing and cutting and keeping a whole big inventory of these files. If I looked at this and said, gee, I might have room for one more ducky or two more duckies, maybe then I go back and I change my count from 10 duckies to 11 or 12. So keep in mind the capability to see this layout, agree with it, and move forward, or go back, change your count to get more up until you get more of a fulfilled nest. And you can keep going back and forth like this until you're satisfied with the nested strategy. So in some cases, I know there's places and they'll print some type of stickers or labels and they keep them in the shop for inventory. As the orders come, they ship them out. So it's just a matter of keep those shelves stocked with labels. Doesn't matter that it's 10 we need today. Just keep on printing them and get as much as up as we need to. So keep in mind that's a very flexible situation. All right, so at this point, I'm going to close my strategy, my nested strategy calculation here in the upper right corner. And now I'm going to select my file, and that's my layout. Over on the far right, I am going to choose the button that says Fit Layout. You'll notice my percentage waste, 39.87%. When I click on Fit Layout, the software takes the nest and my roll size, and it's going to optimize that. So we're really going to get down to the real area of coverage. So when I click on my Fit Layout, my 39 waste went to 38 waste. And again, depending on how many pieces we have and so forth, those numbers are going to vary. All right, at this point, I've got my 10 frog, ducky, and bottle nest with cut information, individual cut information associated to each one. I could now save this out as a PDF as you see it here on the screen. This will be a nested PDF with the cut data as I designated: cut contour, score, and through for the 3 different objects. And then that nested PDF can go into a program that would accept that and again, take that cut information, understand its data, and continue on that workflow. I'm going to show you this through Onyx. So I'm going to go up to File, and I'm going to export to Onyx. Now, this export to Onyx is also the way you might export this information out for another product. So just keep this in mind, even though it does say export to Onyx, I can browse and save this to my desktop. And then when I do that, I'll have that just on my desktop area. Okay, so keep this in mind wherever I want to position this. Now, what I am going to do, because I am using Onyx, is I'm going to go into my RIP folder. And in my RIP folder, I'm going to go into my hot folder. I happen to have in my printer a hot folder designated for a certain cutter model. Remember, hot folders are quick sets. So I'm going to put my file into that location. And the name is going to be controlled by these options here. We have what is the date. And again, we have different formats for that. Same with the time. And then layout is going to be what will the main name be. So I'm going to go with layout 1, 2, 3. But we also could say artwork files. We could do this by the name. We could do this by dimensions, by substrate. You got different categories in here, but I'm going to go with these 3 basic choices in here. Now, if this is something that I'm going to do repeatedly and go to this FC 9000 cutter or my other cutters that I have, I might save this as a preset. And if I do, it's very conveniently going to save this information, and I can just pick this path, this preset, and it'll automatically generate that directory where to go and write the file. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. Now I'm going to go right into my RIP software. Here comes my file. So it's got the layout name, the time and date stamps. This information is set up. You can see I've got my cutter and my tabs. I've got my Graphtec FC 9000 cutter here, 36-inch roll. Okay, so now there's my file. Remember, in Onyx's workflow for cutting, when we print is when our printed cutter marks and barcodes and directional arrows and such as designated by the cutter manufacturer will print along with this nested imagery. And then remember, the cut path data will all go to cut server. So right now, I'll go into cut server and show you that my Graphtec column here has no data. There's no information yet. So it's upon printing, I'll say print now. My file is going to the printer. And if I go back into cut server, I'll see my file, my cut information. And when I select that, I can see my cut data. Now, one thing I did is I specified a cut path for cut contour, and that was the frogs. I specified a cut path for score, that was the duckies, and then I did one for through cut, and then there's a kiss cut layer as well within the file. So that's within the bottles. So for this through cut, score, and cut contour, you'll notice the auto mapping taking place. There's auto mapping to that layer. And how did I get this information in here? Well, when I added my GraphTech cutter, I actually added those extra commands for cut contour, for score, and for through. So if I go to Manage Cutters, select my GraphTech, and go to Configure, and this is completely optional. For the specific cutter model, cut layer settings, it's automatically going to add several conditions. GraphTech talks in terms of conditions for their cut preset data. And I've added cut contour, score, and through. So if you hit add down here, this is where you can come up with your name. Maybe there's going to be a choice for pounce, and then use cutter setting, use a specific condition, or use an individual setting that you know is the proper controls for that cutter. And this is just to this GraphTech. If I go to, for example, a Summa cutter, any other cutter, and you go to configure, again, I can add and give this a special name and then identify for that cutter model the type of cut mechanisms they have, the controls that they have. And I can give this a name. You know, again, maybe this is also going to be pounce, and maybe that, and I have no idea, but I'm just going to say, you know, it's a creasing tool, creasing wheel, or something like that. Whatever the conditions is, they might even have something else that's there, but you'd pick your choice as you need to. And then that preset, cut layer settings, we're kind of automating our stuff a bit, right? We're automating the settings for that. And when I have my cut path from image trace in TrueFit be set to being a pounce, or be set to being a score, or a cut contour, or through, it's going to automatically add that layer and associate this type of cut information to be going with that cut path data. So it automatically matches up that information based on the name. So as we add our cutters and we have quick sets that have the cutter model added, this information is going to come over and be associated. And that's pretty much in a quick overview here of that information. The nice thing is these layouts could be saved. And again, if I said export to Onyx, and I'll browse, and I'll go into my samples folder just to write a file directly there. This is going to be a PDF, nested PDF with those cut path attributes on it. So remember, we can go to Onyx with this directly into the hot folder and automate our workflow. Or if it's a different workflow you need to interface with, you can go to that directory as well. So here's my PDF, and that's what I have. Oh, there we go. So again, you can see the outline for the cut path information, and there's my nested data. So the information's here. It's a nested PDF with the cut designation. Any other application that can accept that information is welcome to work and accept this information from TrueFit. All right. So other examples we have, I'm going to delete this. We can always save our layouts as well. I'm going to delete mine, and I'll go back into these 3 files. I'll select those and I'll delete them. Another example might be if you have a front and a back. Maybe I'm working with that bottle and I have a front and a back workflow. So I can go back into my image tracing, select my choice, preview, and again, make adjustments as I need to. Let's say I need 15 of these, and I've got front and back. So perhaps we're going to be working with a front and back scenario. I can click here where I see FB, front back. And if you look at the preview, it's going to take my front that I just created, my score image trace, path information. It's going to indicate that same shape area for the same file, but mirrored as if it's the back. So when you see something like this, maybe this is going to be hanging at a department store and a grocery store, and we're going to read it one way, turn around, and it's going to look like we're looking through the back, right? It's a mirrored representation. But we can also, instead of front back, where the back is mirrored, we can tell it front front. And now we have this Onyx TrueFit yellow bottle being represented as a right reading front. If you were to walk past it and look behind it again, the other side, back side would be, again, the front. Okay, so we can have it that scenario, or we can completely change this out and click where that back is and browse for a different file. And again, it's going to have to be the same shape, same information, right? Because the front is controlling the cut path. So the back has to be essentially the same artwork file, the same shape, but with different color elements or subject matter inside. Now for something like this, I'll go into my nesting and I'm going to go ahead and set this up for my 36-inch roll again and hit start and let the calculations begin. So one of the nice things is going to be, because I have this set for my front and my back, and again, I can see I've got, I could add one more or two more bottles in here if I really felt like I wanted to. Here's my nested strategy. I'll close this out. I have my front and my back nest. I will do the fit layout to reduce my waste or optimize my sheet. 32.65% waste, fit layout 28.29. So again, I'm optimizing to the shape area of my nested 15 bottles. So at this time, if I double click this layout, it opens it up and lets me see the front and the back. Now, when we're doing something like this with front and back setups, there's some editing we can do and some controls we can do. First off, let's talk about the flip action. How are we going to flip this page from front to back? And that's going to be controlled over here on the far right side. We have double-sided and we have turn or tumble. So you may remember the early terms of imposition and stripping, which was work and turn and work and tumble. Work and turn, as you see, is going to maintain the same bottom edge or gripper, and it's going to flip it based on the side, left and right side or side guides. So that's what's taking place here. If I change it to tumble, it's going to be a bit the opposite. My front and my back are going to flip from bottom edge and top edge. So they're going to flip in the vertical direction, if you will, which is your gripper, and your side guides are going to stay the same. So keep this in mind. It's all in what your needs are. You have turn or tumble, and you can set that up. Another thing is if there should be a need for some type of edit, maybe this one bottle here, you can see how I can select the one element. I could right click and I can do some very specific commands. Like I can say I want to rotate 180. When I do that, the front is going to affect the back. So the back will also rotate 180. If I select that object and perhaps I decide I want to move this over, and I'm just keeping this straight by using the arrows on my keyboard. I'm holding down the right arrow to move this just roughly about there. And I can show you how the back will be, it's affected as well. So when we apply some type of change to the front, manually alter, edit, the back will compensate and be updated. And the same can go for deleting a file. If we decide to take that piece and delete it, the back, it will be deleted. Okay. So keep this in mind, that I'm just going to undo that command. Keep this in mind that things like this are editable. And then for the front and back scenario, I can go back to my layout. I've got my information. I could now write this over, export to Onyx. So keep this in mind, it's export to Onyx, but it can also be going to some other directory folder that we're going to position these files. I'll go back to my preset for my cutter, and I'll send that directly to the hot folder for the cutter. I'll go into my RIP, and I'll see my file coming in. And then I'll have this information to print. So for something in this fashion, or even for something like the first layout example where it's mixed images, I'll go back into this one as well. This file on hold. When we're looking at this scenario, and we saw in Cut Server how we have these shapes now to cut apart. Keep in mind, in Onyx, in the placement strategy, in all 4 placement strategies, in the Options tab, we have this option, Generate Nest Outline Cut Path. And we can even offset that from the original, put a 1-inch offset. This is going to help for weed bordering, okay? It's going to automatically make a cut path outlined around our nest. So you saw it with it off. We simply get the standard cut information as we created it in Image Trace. Here, I'll turn this setting on with a 1-inch offset just for visual, and then I'll print again. And that's going to print and generate another cut path information. So if I go back into Cut Server, I have a new file here, and now you see that 1-inch offset, and that's my outline cut path for the layer. So that's for weed bordering. That feature was created out of a customer request, which is very nice, and also helps and has been enhanced upon now with the offset information. So we can offset that out to our amount that we desire. And that's going to be, in this case, 1 inch away, but that is automatically going to be a cut path. You'll see over here that's set for nest trim box. And that information then could help facilitate for weed bordering. Okay, so again, we can work in TrueFit. Remove that layout. I'll remove this artwork file. We can work with our one-up files and just bring information in very quickly, go to image tracing, let the software do the calculations. Again, after a while, you'll kind of get a sense for the controls and the settings in here that we can modify to indicate our tool type that we're going to be using, our quantity that we want to work with, and then we can go into our nesting, our substrate material size we want to work with, and start and let the calculations begin. And again, once the calculations are finalized, it's doing all the math, if you will, to get the most out of the material, the most out of the nest. It's going to kind of stop flowing. These bars that are calculating stop flowing. We can close this out, select that layout, and fit that layout. Again, that's going to optimize whatever size that came to compared to our 36-inch roll. So I've got a 52%, 49%. And then from there, we could send that information over to our RIP, going directly into our hot folders for our cutters. Again, that automates our process. The file is going to come in. We're going to have our layout previewing and then ripping. And then we'll print and we'll get the cut information to Cut Server. So it's very convenient. We can select different images, load them in as we need to configure this information. We can always go back, let the software add a few more images. Again, if you're in that situation where you need to just keep adding in different components, you know, as many as you need to get them to be positioned for your stock and inventory, you could be doing that. But it's a very convenient, easy, you know, tool to use, very simple. And again, we're talking about, like, as you've been seeing my artwork files, complete shapes, where it's just going to go around that one shape and gather that data. So that's TrueFit.